I didn't expect to see you here. I've been thinking about you all night.
It feels like we're finally home.
The city woke up beneath her balcony like a polished jewel, glittering without effort. From the top floor of the hotel, the view stretched endlessly, glass towers catching the morning sun, traffic moving in neat, obedient lines, the distant call to prayer floating softly between concrete and sky. Everything looked ordered. Perfect. Just like her life. She stood near the window, silk robe wrapped loosely around her, watching the reflection of herself in the glass. To the world, she was a symbol of success, a woman who had it all. The hotel below wasn't just a business, it was her legacy. Every marble floor, every golden light in the lobby, every smiling receptionist existed because of her vision. Magazines often called her graceful, powerful, untouchable. Behind her, her husband adjusted his cufflinks, the faint clink of metal breaking the silence. "You have another meeting today?" he asked casually, not looking up. She smiled, the kind of smile that had become second nature. "Just a short one. The hotel expansion plans." "That's my brilliant wife," he said, finally meeting her eyes in the mirror. He crossed the room and kissed her cheek, brief, polite, practiced. She felt it then. Not pain. Not anger. Just distance. Like standing next to someone through a glass wall downstairs, the hotel lobby buzzed with life. Guests rolled suitcases across polished floors. A pianist played soft notes near the lounge. Staff moved quickly, respectfully, head slightly bowed when she passed through earlier that morning. People admired her from afar, whispering compliments, envying her marriage, her confidence, her crown. If only they knew. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story and want to follow her journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video with friends. You won't want to miss what happens next. At breakfast, they sat across from each other at a table dressed in white linen and fresh flowers. He scrolled through his phone while sipping coffee. She watched him over the rim of her cup, the way his smile appeared suddenly, then vanished just as quickly. "Work message?" she asked lightly. "Yes, just work," he replied, a second too fast. She nodded, stirring her tea slowly. The spoon clinked against porcelain, sharp in the quiet moment. Something felt off, like a painting hung slightly crooked, small enough to ignore, but impossible to unsee once noticed. As he stood to leave, he said, "I might be late tonight." "Meetings?" "Of course," she replied. Calm. Elegant. Controlled. But as she watched him walk away through the grand doors of the hotel, their hotel, a strange unease settled in her chest. The kind that didn't scream, didn't accuse. It simply waited. And somewhere beneath the flawless surface of her perfect life, the first crack quietly appeared, preparing to widen. The evening fell over the city like a velvet curtain, softening the harsh edges of the concrete towers. From her apartment high above the bustling streets, she could see the lights flicker in the hotel below, the lobby's golden chandeliers glowing like fireflies caught in glass. Normally, it should have been comforting, but tonight, the familiar sparkle felt hollow. She noticed it first in small things. The way he came home later each night, his footsteps quieter, as if avoiding detection. The way his phone slipped from his hand too quickly whenever she approached. Even his laughter, once warm and easy, now had a sharp edge, like glass brushing against silk. "Dinner's ready," she called softly one evening, placing a plate of biryani on the table. The fragrant spices filled the apartment, mingling with the faint scent of jasmine drifting in from the balcony. She had always loved how small rituals, food, conversation, even shared silence, made the world feel safe. "I can't tonight," he replied without looking up, eyes glued to his phone. He sounded tired, distracted, but not convincingly so. She paused, hand hovering over her cup of chai. "Late again?" Her voice was calm, even measured. "Yes, meeting ran over." He forced a smile, tapping at the screen. "You know how it is." She nodded, stirring her tea slowly, watching the sugar dissolve like her trust had begun to. Then came the whispers. A colleague, a guest, even a passing staff member, all murmured questions and hints she hadn't asked for. "Did you hear?" one asked with wide eyes. "I think I saw him with someone at the hotel lounge last night." She dismissed it at first, but the seed had been planted. Even as she tried to focus on her work, reviewing floor plans for the new suite, approving linens for the rooms, the rumors tugged at the edges of her mind. She found herself scanning the hotel lobby from her balcony, imagining him there, laughing, talking, standing too close to someone who was not her. At night, she would lie awake, the soft hum of the city beneath her like a heartbeat she couldn't match. He would come home, sometimes hours past midnight, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. Words exchanged were polite, brief, almost rehearsed, as though they existed in a play in which she was only half a character. Something was changing, but she didn't yet have proof. It was a quiet, insidious shift, like a shadow sliding across a polished mirror, barely noticeable until it distorted the reflection entirely. And though she smiled and spoke as if all was well, deep down, a whisper of doubt had begun to echo, persistent and unnerving. Tonight, as she watched the streetlights flicker through the glass, she realized the first crack had appeared in the flawless surface of her life, and she had no idea how wide it might grow. The hotel was quiet now, long after the last guest had checked in and the lobby lights dimmed to a warm amber glow. She walked through the polished corridors, the soft echo of her heels against the marble floor a lonely companion. Everything was hers, every door, every lamp, every pristine carpet, but tonight, the grandeur felt like a cage. She paused at the top of the grand staircase, gazing down at the lobby below. The chandelier's crystals reflected tiny specks of light, like frozen stars. Her mind raced, turning over the rumors, the late nights, the subtle changes in his voice. The urge to confront him burned, fierce and raw, but something inside her told her to wait. To watch. To know the truth before speaking. Her reflection in the glass railing caught her off guard. She saw herself as the world did, elegant, poised, untouchable. And yet, beneath that surface, doubt and fear gnawed quietly. Could she really trust him anymore? The idea came like a sudden spark. What if she didn't confront him directly? What if she became invisible instead, slipped into the background, watched, listened? The thought twisted in her mind, terrifying and thrilling at once. She could wear the guise of someone ordinary, someone overlooked. No one would suspect her. She could see everything without interference. Her heart thumped at the thought. A cleaner, in my own hotel. The words felt daring, almost dangerous. But the tension in her chest told her this was necessary. The truth needed to be caught, not whispered, not assumed, but seen with her own eyes. She went to her closet and pulled out a plain uniform she had ordered weeks ago, before suspicion had even taken root. Simple black trousers, a muted blouse, soft shoes that would let her move quietly. As she held the uniform in her hands, she felt a shiver. I will see. I will know. No one can hide from me. Her fingers lingered over the fabric as she whispered to herself, this is the only way. Outside, the city buzzed on, unaware. Cars honked, shopkeepers called out their evening greetings, neon signs flickered lazily against the darkening sky. She slipped into the hotel's service entrance, a side door few noticed. The smell of cleaning supplies mixed with the faint perfume of guests' lingering presence. It felt alien, yet strangely empowering. For the first time in weeks, her mind was clear. She was no longer just a wife waiting for answers, she was an observer, a strategist, a shadow moving through her own kingdom. Fear and courage danced together in her chest, every heartbeat a reminder of the risk. She squared her shoulders, adjusted the cap over her hair, and whispered one last promise to herself, I will find the truth. Whatever it takes. And with that, she vanished into the corridors of the hotel, a stranger in plain sight, ready to uncover what had been hidden in the glittering heart of her perfect life. The uniform felt strange against her skin, stiff and plain compared to the silks and designer fabrics she normally wore. She tugged the cap lower over her hair, bending her head as if trying to disappear entirely. The hotel corridors stretched endlessly before her, polished floors gleaming under soft yellow lights. This was her empire, every detail meticulously curated, but tonight, it was a world she had to navigate in shadows. Pushing the cleaning cart quietly, she paused at the first room. Guests had left in a hurry that morning, and she knelt to pick up a discarded napkin, smoothing it over the spotless carpet. The smell of lemon polish mingled with faint traces of perfume left behind, a scent that made her chest tighten unexpectedly. This was her life, her creation, and yet she moved through it as if she belonged nowhere at all. "Hey, can you take the towels to room 405 after you're done here?" a housekeeper called from down the hall. "Yes, of course," she replied softly, keeping her voice low, careful not to give herself away. The housekeeper nodded and moved on, barely noticing her. No one ever noticed her. The guests passing by smiled politely at the other staff but rarely at her. A child tugged at his mother's hand and stared curiously as she pushed the cart past, and the mother quickly turned him away. The world saw her as invisible, just another uniform, another worker, nothing more. She paused for a moment, leaning against the cart. The irony struck her sharply. She had spent years building a life others admired, a life of wealth, power, and prestige. Yet in a simple black uniform, walking quietly along the same floors she had decorated with care, she felt unseen. Small. Vulnerable. Forgotten. The air smelled of soap and polished wood, punctuated by the faint aroma of exotic flowers from the lobby arrangements. She moved from room to room, silently noting faces, voices, gestures. Her husband's laughter rang faintly from somewhere deep within the hotel, carrying an ease she no longer felt with him. In this guise, she realized something profound: power wasn't in the walls she had built, or the gold she had acquired. Power was often invisible, unnoticed, and here she was, experiencing the life of those who served without acknowledgement. It humbled her. It strengthened her. She straightened her back, pushing the cart forward. Every knock on a door, every folded towel, every unnoticed glance reminded her of what she had to see, what she had to uncover. Her eyes flicked down the hall toward the lounge, where her husband sometimes lingered, unaware of her presence. Silently, she whispered to herself, "If they think I am invisible, then they will reveal everything." And with that thought, she disappeared further into the quiet rhythm of her own kingdom, unseen yet observing, ready to find the truth hidden behind the glittering facade. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed the cleaning cart down the narrow hallway. The keycard in her hand felt heavier than usual, the plastic biting into her fingers. Room 712. She had been assigned to clean it today, a routine task, but something in the air made her pause. A faint perfume floated through the corridor, sweet and sharp, almost intoxicating. She knocked softly, just as protocol demanded. There was no answer. Sliding the keycard into the lock, she pushed the door open slowly, letting the hinges creak just enough to mask her own presence. Then she heard it. A laugh, familiar, warm, and utterly wrong. Her heart stopped. She leaned just slightly into the doorway, her breath caught in her chest. There he was, her husband, sitting casually on the edge of the bed, the sunlight streaming through the half-open curtains making the room glow. And next to him, a woman. Not a guest, not a visitor, someone intimately familiar to him in ways that should never exist outside the walls of their home. He was holding her hand, whispering something she couldn't hear at first, but the way he leaned toward her, the curve of his smile, the ease with which he laughed, it was enough. Enough to shatter the illusion she had clung to for weeks. She froze. The cleaning cart remained beside her, forgotten. Her uniform made her invisible in their eyes, but every part of her burned with recognition. The room smelled of fresh flowers the woman had brought, mixed with the faint tang of expensive cologne her husband always wore. Every detail felt like salt in an open wound. "Oh, I can't believe you remembered," the woman said softly, her voice like honey. "I always do," he replied, his tone careless, intimate. "I didn't think anyone would notice." He didn't know she was there. He didn't even imagine it. And that ignorance made it worse. Her stomach tightened. She wanted to scream, to storm in and confront him, to throw open the curtains and demand answers. But she stayed still, silent, as though her life depended on invisibility, which, tonight, it did. She let them exist in their deceit, watching every gesture, every touch, every word. Her chest felt hollow, yet a part of her, the part that had chosen this path, held steady. She was seeing the truth, raw and unfiltered, for the first time. The laughter she had once associated with love now felt like knives against her heart. Slowly, she backed out of the room, careful not to make a sound. The corridor swallowed her as if she had never been there, her shadow merging with the walls. Her hands gripped the cart harder. The hotel, her kingdom, had just revealed its darkest secret. And somewhere deep inside, a silent promise formed, she would uncover everything, no matter the cost. She leaned against the corner of the hallway, pretending to straighten a carpet while every nerve in her body screamed to move, to shout, to tear the room apart. But she stayed still, silent, invisible in her plain uniform. Her husband had no idea she was there, not a clue that the cleaner he barely noticed was the woman who had shared his life, his home, his heart. He laughed again, leaning back against the headboard, and the sound twisted inside her chest. The woman beside him reached up, brushing a strand of hair from his face, and he murmured something that made her stomach churn. "You don't know how much I missed this," he said, voice casual, intimate. "It's been too long, we should do this more often." The words hit her like stones. She gripped the edge of the cleaning cart, knuckles whitening, and forced herself to breathe. Every syllable was a betrayal, each one sharper because he spoke freely, unaware of the eyes that were silently drinking it all in. The mistress laughed softly, leaning closer. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten." "I could never forget," he said, smiling, as if rehearsing lines meant for someone else. "You know that." Her pulse thundered in her ears. She could hear it over the soft hum of the air conditioner, over the distant clatter of dishes from the staff kitchen, over the polite chatter of other guests walking the corridors. The world seemed to shrink down to that single hotel room, that single moment where her perfect life cracked completely open. She forced herself to step closer, pretending to dust a corner, careful not to make a sound. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he would hear it. And yet he remained oblivious, gesturing, laughing, speaking words that should have been hers. Alone. A strange, painful irony coursed through her. Here she was, hidden in plain sight, and he shared himself with someone else as freely as he had once shared his mornings and nights with her. She felt the weight of every unspoken memory, the breakfasts, the whispered conversations, the soft touches, all trampled under his careless words. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. Strength, not confrontation, was her weapon now. She would see the truth. She would remember every detail. And when the time came, the mask of invisibility she wore today would make her all the more powerful. Silently, she straightened the sheets one last time, eyes fixed on him. Each laugh, each word, each careless gesture etched itself into her memory. He had never recognized her, not today, not yet, but soon, he would pay for every hidden moment, every lie. She turned quietly, pushing the cart away, letting the door close softly behind her. The weight of the betrayal pressed down, but beneath it, a new resolve burned, she would uncover everything. The corridor was empty now, the hum of the air conditioning and the distant clatter of closing doors the only sounds. She pushed the cleaning cart into a quiet corner, far from the staff room, and let herself finally breathe. The uniform that had made her invisible now felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of everything she had seen. She sank onto the edge of the cart, head in her hands, the silence around her pressing down like a physical weight. Her body shook as she let the tears fall, hot and unrestrained. The betrayal, the laughter, the careless intimacy she had witnessed in that room, it all came rushing in like a storm she could no longer hold back. "Why?" she whispered into the empty hallway, voice trembling. "Why like this?" The words echoed off the polished walls, fading into the soft buzz of the hotel at night. She thought of the years she had spent building this life, the endless meetings, the lavish parties, the quiet mornings together with him. All of it felt like a fragile glass ornament smashed on the floor. Her tears continued, but slowly, the storm began to settle. Each heartbeat, once a drum of anguish, became steadier. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her uniform and looked around at the corridor, the very corridors she had designed, the walls she had chosen, the lamps she had picked with care. They were all hers. She had created this world. She realized then that no one could take that from her, no matter how carelessly they treated her heart. Her breathing slowed, and with each exhale, clarity came. The pain was still there, lingering like a shadow at the edges of her vision, but it no longer consumed her. She understood something profound: anger and grief could be fuel. They could sharpen her, focus her, make her see the truth with unblinking eyes. She stood slowly, pushing the cart forward, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished floor. "I will see everything," she whispered to herself, voice quiet but firm. "I will know. I will not be invisible anymore." The city outside had grown quiet too, neon lights flickering against the darkness, cars moving in distant lines like tiny fireflies. Somewhere far below, the hotel hummed with life, oblivious to the quiet vow made in its upper corridors. She straightened her uniform, adjusted her cap, and stepped forward, renewed purpose burning in her chest. Tonight, she was still the silent cleaner, unseen and unnoticed. But inside, a plan was taking shape, fueled by every tear, every betrayal. She would uncover the truth, and when the time came, she would no longer remain invisible. The ballroom was quiet now, the last of the chandeliers flickering as if uncertain whether to stay lit. She stood at the edge of the room, no longer hidden behind the plain black uniform or the cap that had disguised her for so long. Her hair fell in soft waves, her eyes sharp and steady, a quiet storm contained within her calm exterior. He looked up from his phone, mid-laugh, and froze. For the first time in months, his gaze locked on her, not the wife he had ignored, not the woman he had betrayed, but the woman who had moved through his world unseen, who had collected every word, every gesture, every careless secret. What?" he stammered, the words catching in his throat. She held up the stack of photos, messages, and receipts she had quietly gathered over weeks. Each piece of evidence was a shard of truth, a mirror reflecting his betrayal back at him. The hotel staff she had trained, the guests she had served, the very corridors she had walked in silence, they had all witnessed parts of his deception. And she had captured it all. "You didn't see me," she said softly, letting the words sink into the air between them. "You laughed, you lied, you betrayed me, right under my nose. And you never even noticed who I was." His face turned pale. His hand shook slightly as he reached for her, but she stepped back, calm, untouchable. The room that had once been his domain now felt like a cage, the chandeliers casting long shadows over the truth he could no longer deny. I didn't," he tried, but the excuses fell flat. She had already seen enough, and the evidence left no space for lies. She placed the photographs on the polished table, letting them slide under the soft glow of the chandeliers. Each one told a story he could not rewrite, a story of carelessness, of infidelity, of arrogance. "You thought I was invisible," she said, her voice steady, almost melodic in its quiet authority. "But I saw everything. And now, so does the world you tried to hide from me." He looked at her, truly looked, for the first time, and the realization struck him like a blow. The woman he had underestimated, the one he thought powerless, was standing before him stronger than he had ever known. Shock, fear, and regret flickered across his face, but it was too late. She turned, letting her gaze sweep across the room, and for a brief moment, the hotel, the empire they had shared, felt entirely hers again. The power had shifted, the truth had been revealed, and she was finally free to step out of the shadow of betrayal. As she walked away, her steps echoed softly, a quiet reminder that some truths, once uncovered, can never be hidden again. The morning sun spilled over the city like liquid gold, spilling through the wide glass windows of the hotel. She stood at the balcony, the wind teasing loose strands of hair across her face, and for the first time in weeks, she breathed freely. The world below bustled as usual, street vendors shouting their morning greetings, rickshaws rattling over uneven roads, and pedestrians weaving through the crowded sidewalks. And yet, the noise no longer disturbed her. She had walked through corridors of betrayal, observed lies in plain sight, and uncovered a truth that had once threatened to shatter her. But standing here, in the soft glow of dawn, she realized something far more powerful than revenge or anger: freedom. The city stretched before her, not as a cage, but as a canvas. Every polished street, every bustling market, every honking car was part of the life she would now reclaim for herself. She smiled softly, almost to herself, as she let the uniform, the symbol of her disguise and silent courage, fold neatly into a drawer. She did not need masks anymore, she had the truth, and with it, the strength to walk away. A small bird landed on the balcony railing, chirping cheerfully as if celebrating her quiet victory. She reached out a hand, letting the sunlight warm her skin. This is mine," she whispered, her voice steady and serene. Not his, not hers, mine. Her phone buzzed with messages, business updates, meeting reminders, requests for approvals, but she ignored them for now. Today was hers. The hotel, her empire, her city, all of it remained, but she realized she did not need to anchor herself to a person who had betrayed her trust. She had built her world, she had survived her storm, now she would live it fully, on her own terms. She turned, slipping into a light coat, and walked toward the elevators. Every step was deliberate, filled with purpose, the echo of her heels against the marble floors a reminder that she was seen, not invisible, and stronger than she had ever been. The hallways she had once walked as a silent observer now resonated with her presence, quiet but undeniable. Freedom, she murmured as she pressed the elevator button, watching the city through glass walls. It wears no crown, yet it is the most powerful thing of all. And as the doors closed, carrying her down to the bustling streets below, she felt it fully, the weight of betrayal lifted, the chains of doubt broken, and the quiet, unshakable power of a life reclaimed. Today, she walked not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a woman who had finally found herself.